So imagine you're stepping into the damp, earthy air of a local plant nursery.
Oh, I know that exact smell.
Right. It's so distinct.
Yeah.
And you're just wandering through the aisles past rows of the usual seasonal greens when you spot something pushed off into a dim, forgotten corner.
Like a hidden treasure.
Exactly like a hidden treasure. It's entirely out of season. Just this fiery, vibrant explosion of orange and yellow erupting from these dark, almost black leaves.
Oh, wow. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, and for most of us, I mean, that is an instant purchase. You grab it immediately. But for a master gardener, stumbling on that exact same plant is not an excuse to pull out their wallet.
Yeah, it's actually the opposite.
Right. It is the beginning of this rigorous, highly calculated exercise in saying no.
Which, runs completely counter to human nature. I mean, when we find something rare, our instinct is to acquire it right away.
The FOMO kicks in hard.
Exactly. Yet the document we're looking at today proves that true expertise isn't just about what you know. It's really about the discipline of restraint.
And today's source material is fascinating because it is incredibly small. We aren't analyzing some sprawling industry report or a 500-page biography today.
No, not at all.
We are doing a deep dive into a micro-document, a single hyper-specific journal entry published today, actually, June 21, 2026.
Hot off the presses.
Right. It's by a writer named Eng, and the post is titled Cultivating the Sunset Belle, a study in floral aesthetics.
I love that title.
It's great, right? It's a tiny fragment of a much larger body of work, specifically labeled Notes on Gardening, Part 932.
Part 932, that's just wild.
It shows the dedication. And finding this post, well, it feels like unearthing the private diary of an elite art critic. But, instead of deconstructing a Renaissance masterpiece in a museum, this critic is intensely evaluating an abandoned plant in the back of a garden center.
Yeah, and the brevity of the text is really deceiving here. Because for you listening, the real value of this deep dive has very little to do with actual horticulture.
Right, it's way bigger than that.
Exactly. It has everything to do with cognitive frameworks. I mean, analyzing a master, someone who has written over 900 notes on a single subject, it allows us to reverse engineer how they process complex information.
Which is such a valuable skill.
It really is. Eng's brief encounter with this plant demonstrates this absolute masterclass in separating objective biological facts from subjective emotional responses, and then applying a layer of economic logic that most people never even consider.
So let's actually look at the encounter itself. Eng writes about going on a field trip to a local plant center, noting they've done this numerous times over, quote, all these moons.
All these moons. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, it establishes this massive, almost mythical timeline of experience, right? Eng has been observing the local flora for years, and yet there's a moment of genuine surprise in the text.
Because they realize they've missed something.
Exactly. Eng realizes they have never actually written a dedicated entry about this particular plant species before. The sunset belle, which is scientifically known as Chrysothemis pulchella.
And finding a blind spot in your own extensive knowledge base, that is often what triggers the deepest level of observation.
Oh, for sure. You suddenly pay way more attention.
Right. Eng doesn't just glance at the sunset belle and mentally check a box. The text immediately slows down. It's like Eng begins to completely dismantle the plant visually, analyzing its architecture piece by piece.
And the visual breakdown is just stunning. Eng starts at the base, describing a, quote, striking mixture of bronze and black textured foliage.
Bronze and black.
Yeah, that detail alone stops you in your tracks. I mean, we are so conditioned to think of plants as fundamentally green.
Right. Green leaves, colored flowers, that's the standard template.
Exactly. So to see a living thing produce leaves that are a textured bronze and black, it sounds almost industrial. It sounds heavy and dramatic.
Well, and there is a fascinating biological mechanism behind that kind of coloration.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When a plant produces dark foliage, those deep purples, bronzes, and blacks, it's usually due to high concentrations of anthocyanins.
Anthocyanins. Okay, what do those do?
They're basically pigments that act as a biological sunscreen, or like a defense mechanism against environmental stressors. So they absorb different wavelengths of light than your standard green chlorophyll.
So it's not just a pretty color.
Not at all. By noting the bronze and black texture, Eng is implicitly recognizing a plant that has evolved to manage light in a very specific, resource-intensive way. It isn't just a color choice, it's an evolutionary strategy.
That is so cool. And that dark, moody foliage It acts as the perfect theatrical backdrop for the next anatomical layer.
Right, because it doesn't stop at the leaves.
No, bursting out of those dark leaves, Eng describes vibrant clusters of orange-red calyces.
Calyces, yeah.
And for the benefit of the readers, Eng explicitly defines what a calyx is, noting that these are the sepals of the flower.
Which is a helpful detail.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
And then framed by those orange-red sepals are the actual blooms, the bright yellow trumpet-shaped flowers.
The visual contrast there must be amazing.
Yeah, it reads like the plant is wearing a brightly colored protective overcoat over its actual outfit.
And that overcoat analogy is biologically accurate, actually. Sepals form the calyx, which is the protective outer layer that shields the flower bud before it opens.
Oh, makes sense. So they're the armor.
Basically, yeah. But in the sunset bell, the plant has evolved to make those protective sepals incredibly vibrant, that bright orange-red color.
Why would it do that before the flower even opens?
Well, the evolutionary advantage there is fascinating. By coloring the calyx, the plant begins attracting pollinators long before the actual yellow trumpet flower is ready to open and reproduce.
Oh, wow. So
It is a dual-stage attraction system.
That's brilliant. The plant is essentially putting up a neon billboard before the restaurant even opens.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But what really strikes me is Eng's cognitive framing here. Eng doesn't just look at the sunset bell and see a singular blur of warm colors.
Right, they don't just say, look at this fiery flower.
Exactly. They conceptually separate the dark foliage from the orange-red protective calyx, and then they separate the calyx from the yellow reproductive trumpet flower.
And that separation, that is the absolute hallmark of analytical thinking. I mean, when novices approach a dense, complicated topic, they tend to get totally overwhelmed.
Because there's just too much to take in.
Right, because they are trying to process the entire system simultaneously. They're blinded by the holistic visual impact. But what Eng is doing, isolating the variables, that's a framework you can apply to literally anything.
Like outside of gardening, you mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you are learning a new programming language or, analyzing a financial portfolio, you have to mentally pull apart the foliage from the flowers.
Break it down into pieces.
Yes. You appreciate each mechanism on its own terms so you can understand how the entire engine functions.
That makes total sense. Now, you'd think discovering such a biologically striking, highly evolved specimen in a dark corner would be an instant win.
You'd think so, yeah.
I mean, the objective beauty is clearly there. But the moment Eng evaluates this vibrant flower, we get a total curveball.
Huge curveball.
Having established exactly what the sunset bell looks like objectively, Eng pivots to subjective feeling. And the text delivers this incredibly blunt verdict. Quote, "Judging from my aesthetic taste, the bloom does not satisfy my preference for flowering plants."
It is such a jarring shift in tone.
It really is. Eng spends considerable time detailing the incredible contrast and biological uniqueness, only to flatly reject it.
And it almost feels arrogant, right?
Yeah. Calling the plant striking and unique, praising the vivid coloration, and then just essentially dismissing it. It's like a master sommelier tasting a technically flawless 100-point Bordeaux.
Right, recognizing the perfect tannin structure.
Exactly. Recognizing the brilliant harvest conditions and then simply saying, yeah, but this doesn't fit my restaurant's menu.
It's ruthless.
It is. How does a plant pass the objective test of being visually striking yet completely fail the aesthetic test?
Well, it reads as arrogance, but it's actually the opposite. It's profound self-awareness.
Really? How so?
What we are witnessing here is the tension between objective reality and subjective boundary. Think about the psychology of a beginner in any field.
Okay, like a new hobbyist?
Right. If you are new to gardening or collecting art or even just building a wardrobe, you suffer from a constant fear of missing out, FOMO.
Oh, yeah. You want everything.
And if the consensus says something is unique or striking, you feel this immense internal pressure to acquire it. You basically outsource your taste to the objective facts.
Oh, that is such a good point. You buy the plant just so you can tell other people you have the rare plant. You don't want to look foolish for passing up a good specimen.
Exactly. But Eng's internal locus of taste is entirely secure.
They don't need the external validation.
None at all. The text explicitly acknowledges the plant is, quote, rather unique. Eng can respect the objective brilliance of the sunset bell without feeling any psychological obligation to love it.
They separate the fact from the feeling.
Yes. True mastery means recognizing that something can be universally good without being specifically good for you.
And Eng actually provides the receipts for that secure internal taste right there in the journal entry.
Oh, the cross-reference, yes.
Right. Rather than just dismissing the sunset bell out of hand, Ang cross-references it. The text draws a direct comparison to another plant they have discussed in the past, the Mussaenda Red Donaluz.
Which Ang points out was covered way back in part 925 of their notes.
Yeah. And that single sentence, that reference, it reveals an immense cognitive load happening behind the scenes.
It's staggering, really. Ang doesn't evaluate new information in a vacuum.
No. The moment the sunset bell is perceived, Ang's brain queries this massive internal database of past experiences.
Like pulling a file from a cabinet.
Exactly. They pull the file on the Donaluz, compare the structural and visual similarities, and use that historical data to solidify their current judgment.
And for you listening, that is an active defense mechanism against hype.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, when a new trend hits your industry or, like a flashy new tool hits the market, it is so easy to get swept up in the novelty.
You feel like you have to adopt it immediately.
Right. But if you have that internal catalog, if you can say, well, this is objectively vibrant, but historically I prefer the architecture of the Donaluz, then you are suddenly immune to the pressure to conform.
Because you know what actually works for you.
Exactly. You can respect the new tool without letting it disrupt your workflow.
That level of aesthetic confidence is amazing, and it leads us directly to the final friction point of the entry.
The big decision.
Right. We have an objectively unique plant sitting out of season in a corner. We have a master gardener who respects the biology, but is personally lukewarm on the aesthetics.
The scale is perfectly balanced at this point.
It is. So what actually tips the decision? What is the final variable that causes Ang to literally walk away and leave the plant in the nursery?
It all comes down to the hard reality of economics.
Yes. The text states plainly that the price was, quote, higher than usual, and because of that premium, Ang completely skips the purchase.
Just walks away.
But Ang doesn't just walk out empty-handed, mentally speaking. The entry outlines two highly calculated backup strategies.
Always have a plan B.
And a plan C. Strategy 1. Ang will wait to get a seedling specimen at an affordable price. Or strategy 2. Ang will wait until the next batch is imported to the local market, stating with absolute certainty that the price will definitely be cheaper then.
The shift from floral aesthetics to market dynamics there is just seamless.
It's like a different person writing it suddenly.
But it's the same holistic view. Ang understands that a high price in this specific moment does not reflect the intrinsic value of the sunset bell.
The logic here is ruthless, and it forces us to really examine the psychological mechanism of the treasure hunt.
Oh, the dopamine hit.
Yes. Finding something out of season in a forgotten corner triggers a massive dopamine spike. Our brains instantly read that situation as scarcity.
And scarcity creates that overwhelming evolutionary urge to hoard the resource before someone else does.
Exactly. Most people would look at that higher than usual price tag and just rationalize it.
They'd say, well, it's destiny that I found it.
Right. They would tell themselves the premium is just a finder's fee for stumbling upon a rare gem.
Because scarcity bypasses our prefrontal cortex. It turns off the logical planning part of the brain and activates the amygdala.
Fight or flight. Or in this case, buy immediately.
Right. You feel an urgency to act. But Ang possesses a cognitive override here. Instead of succumbing to the dopamine hit of the rare find, Ang leans on a systems thinking approach.
And by systems thinking, you mean understanding the actual supply chain.
Precisely. Ang knows how nurseries actually operate behind the scenes. Plants are commodities that move on cyclical import schedules.
They aren't magical artifacts that just appear.
Right. So by stating that the price will be cheaper when the next batch is imported, Ang is recognizing that today's scarcity is entirely artificial.
Oh, that's a key distinction. Artificial scarcity.
It is a temporary anomaly in the local supply chain. The plant isn't actually rare. It's just currently out of stock everywhere else locally.
So why pay a premium?
Exactly. Why pay a premium for artificial scarcity when you understand the mechanics of the market?
That completely reframes the entire concept of patience for me. We often think of patience as just gritting your teeth and waiting it out.
Passive waiting, yeah.
But Ang's strategies, buying a seedling or waiting for the import batch, those are active, leveraged decisions.
Yeah, are very deliberate.
If Ang buys the seedling, they are choosing to leverage time instead of capital. They are paying a lower financial cost, but taking on the biological risk and the time cost of growing the plant themselves.
It is a total masterclass in delayed gratification. Ang is willing to delay the aesthetic reward to optimize the economic outcome. And I think this is the most critical takeaway for you listening today. True expertise in any domain, whether you are a gardener, an investor, or just managing a career path, is the ability to synchronize these different layers of
It
analysis.
is the harmony of the whole system. Ang looks at the sunset bell and runs 3 distinct algorithms simultaneously.
The first being the objective biological analysis.
Right. Breaking down the heavy bronze foliage and the vibrant dual-stage protective calyx and flower. And second, the subjective aesthetic analysis.
Referencing the internal catalog.
Exactly. Comparing it to the Donnellus and confidently acknowledging it just doesn't fit their personal preference.
And then third, the economic analysis.
Identifying the artificial scarcity. Recognizing the out-of-season premium. And deploying a supply chain logic to walk away without a shred of FOMO.
And, any one of those frameworks on its own is incredibly valuable. But layering them on top of each other in a single instantaneous decision, that is what separates the novice from the master.
It really is staggering to realize that all of this cognitive architecture was deployed over a single plant sitting in a corner and documented in a journal entry of barely 150 words.
Just a tiny blip of text.
Notes on Gardening, Part 932. It really reminds us that expertise isn't loud.
No, it rarely is.
It isn't about buying the biggest, rarest thing in the room just to prove you can. Expertise is quiet. It is the unemotional clarity to look at a vibrant, fiery, out-of-season showstopper and calmly keep walking.
The discipline to leave the asset on the table because the variables don't align.
Exactly. Which brings us to our final thought for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We spend so much of our lives trying to hunt down unique opportunities.
Always looking for the next big thing.
We want the rare job offer, the perfect house, the ideal project. But I want you to think about your own landscape right now. If an expert can look at a strikingly unique sunset bell, a specimen they've spent all these moons observing, and still confidently leave it behind just because the timing and the price are slightly off.
What about your own life?
Right. What unique opportunities in your own life might actually be artificial scarcity? What rare finds are you currently stressing over that might actually be worth skipping entirely until your season is right?